Deep Threat Sports. We're back at it again. The same trio. You got me, Dave. You got Colin. You got Bryant. Bryant's back. I think he went on vacation to Dubai, is what I heard. I don't know. That's just what I've been hearing through the grapevine. Hey, it is what it is. But we got a lot of good stuff for you guys as the college football season starts to wrap up. We're not quite done yet because don't forget, we got a 12-team playoff this year. So we got more games to watch. So you can't beat it. So as a viewer, that's what you want. The more football you can get, the better. But we're leading into this weekend. This weekend's going to have a lot of good matchups. These are all our conferences matchups. So it's going to be the best of the best on the field. And, at this point, it's going to make a big difference for a lot of teams on playoffs and so many implications moving forward. But again, we're going to talk about all that. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about signing day. Signing day was today. We're recording this on Wednesday. Signing day, there was a lot of shifts. Some that were like, okay, that makes sense that they have a good class. But some people kind of made a big splash there. Then we're going to talk transfer portal as well, because that is where a lot of teams get experienced players. And there's going to be a lot of movement there, especially at the quarterback position. There's a lot of teams with needs at that quarterback position and even another position. So that's going to be huge. We're going to talk the playoffs, 12-team playoffs, who we think is going to get in, how we think that's going to play out, just give you the full gist of it. Then we're talking also our bets. Colin, tell them how we did this year, how we're doing on the year.
Hey, fellas, so far, things got a little hairy there for about 2 weeks. We were kind of just barely keeping our head above water for the week to week, trying to stay 500. 7-2 week last week. If you missed it, that's your fault. It was on our socials. We tell you guys our socials every single episode. We dropped it on Twitter, X, call it what you want, dropped it on Facebook. Like I said, 7-2 week last week. We are 69-56 on the season. That is damn good. Anybody out there that bets knows that a 69-56 clip is very, very impressive for a full season. And like Dave said here too, we have an action-packed episode for you here. We did push it off to Wednesday because we wanted to make sure we covered signing day. We wanted to make sure we got the latest transfer portals. We wanted to kind of digest what was going on with the playoffs and really get a good feel for the conference championship games and have the right picks for you guys this episode. I am super ecstatic for this episode. I am more excited for this episode than I have been any episode we've done all season long, and that's no bullshit. I am really pumped for this one. I'm glad to have Bryant back, Dave back. I'm glad we're all three here and ready to get after it. We are going to dive deep into this. Let's get it going, boys. Come on now.
But guys, I thought college football ended. The regular season ended last weekend.
Hey, man. We're just getting started. We're just getting started, Bryant.
We are just getting started. December is probably the most hectic month of college football.
Hey, college football is like fine wine. The further along we get, the better it gets, and it just keeps getting better and better and better.
Hey, we're just aerating that pour, baby. We got a little air in the pour. Make sure we got some bubbles. Things are looking awesome. And to Brian's point there, he's just messing with you guys. But what we are gonna make clear is even when the season's over, Deep Threat Sports Network, us, the college gang here, we're gonna keep coming at you. We're not gonna take a full off season off. We're not gonna roll like that. We're gonna come at you as often as possible. A lot of transfer portal discussion. That to me is one of the most fun topics to cover with the NIL and how this sport is shaping up. But fellas, let's waste no more time here. Let's dive into this top signing day discussion here. Dave, lead us off.
Oh man, this is a big one. I did a decent amount of research on this just because I was really curious, where's everybody going? Because again, now you got to factor in money. You're not just factoring in you want to go to Bama, you want to go to Georgia, you want to go to Texas, you want to go to these big programs. But yes, no shot to anyone. Texas does have the best class for as of now. They got 4 5-stars, 14 4-stars, and then they've got 6 3-stars. So that's just gonna be huge. And then we've got Bama. Bama's got 4 5-stars, 14 4-stars, and 3 3-stars. And then they've got some talent there. I'm just gonna give you guys the gist of it, and then I'm gonna have Colin and Brian kind of give you guys, why these teams are where they're at. Because if you really look at Texas and Bama, the only difference is that Texas has three more 3-stars. So that's the only difference there, really. And you look at it, and then it really comes down to how good are these other players. But then Georgia comes right behind them at number 3. Georgia has 4 5-stars, 18 4-stars, and 3 4-stars. So you would look at the numbers and think, oh, then Georgia should be the top team. But Colin, tell us why Georgia's not the top team, even though they've got more 4-stars. They've got the same amount of 5-stars, and they've got, one more 4-star or 3-star than Bama, and then just only 2 less than Texas.
Well, and real quick too, Deep Threat Sports Network, we reference 247 Sports here, so this is where we're gathering all of our information. And to be honest with you, Dave, yes, Texas is the #1 class, and to be, I'm not too surprised by that, especially with how obviously Texas is a massive state. They have a massive draw. They are the state school. They can keep guys in state, and just a massive pull from there. And with the recent success that Texas has going on, moving to the SEC, I think that's why you see them take this big jump. Obviously, tons and tons of NIL money. They're headlined by Jonah Williams, safety out of Galveston. So, I mean, this is a really, really good class. But speaking to that a little bit, you see Alabama at #2, but let's focus on the fact that Alabama average recruit rank of a 93.46. That is a tick above Texas at 93.45. So for me, maybe you could still give the edge to Bama. And also, let's point out that the SEC has 12 of the top 20 recruiting classes, and that is incredible. I mean, I want to dive into Mizzou a little bit because we have a lot of Mizzou listeners and their recruiting class and what we think of that too before we wrap up the signing day topics. But, Mizzou finishes at I think 19th last I looked in the recruiting rankings, and that checks in at number 11 in the SEC. Think about that for a second. 19th in the country recruiting, 11th in the SEC. That is absolutely mind-boggling. And yes,
for those people that don't really know the SEC that thoroughly, how many teams is there in the SEC? Because 11.
16.
Exactly, 11 out of 16. That just shows how crazy that is.
12 of the SEC 16 is in the top 20. I mean, this is absolutely crazy to me. And obviously, adding Texas and Oklahoma puts another dynamic on that and makes it a little bit tougher because Texas and Oklahoma do recruit very well. I feel like Texas and Oklahoma recruit themselves. I think Steve Sarkisian is obviously a great coach, great recruiter, proving himself, proving his worth. I don't want to dog on Brent Venables too much. I don't feel like Brent Venables is anywhere near a Steve Sarkisian type level coach. But so I think Oklahoma kind of recruits themselves is where I'm going with that. But yeah, man, Georgia, you see them at #3, another fantastic job by them. They're headlined by Elijah Griffin, a defensive lineman from Savannah, Georgia. They kept the top recruit for them in state. Bama, like I said a second ago, very good class, headlined by Keelan Russell from Duncanville, Texas, to go in there and dip into Texas and get the top quarterback out of Texas. Fantastic job by them. So the SEC all-time high right now in recruiting. Brian, I'm going to kick it to you so I don't just sit here and ramble because I love to ramble. So I'm going to let you get your moment here and shine in on this.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of paying attention to signing day all day. And one thing that kind of struck me as wild, the only team not in the top 20, only team in the top 20 that is not in the SEC or the Big Ten is Notre Dame. The rest of the 20 teams in the top 20 are in the SEC and or Big Ten. Thought that was kind of shocking. It's wild. It shows that kind of the Big Ten and the SEC are the big boys in college football, even on the recruiting trail. But Oregon go ahead.
Not to cut you off with that, Bryant, just because you're pointing that out, let's focus how Clemson is outside the top 25.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think that's the biggest red flag right now because they're outside the top 25 for the first. I think this is the second time in school history that they're outside the top 25. They lost 5 of their top 7 recruits in the over the stretch. I mean, that's bad. And not to mention, Colin, you know how bad I've been on Dabo Swinney about the transfer portal. So if he's
they're gonna have.
If he's not
they're
signing
gonna have to get in the portal
he's
now.
He's got to go to the portal. There's no other option. I mean, if you don't get if you're not signing any quality talent right out of high school, I'm sorry, but there's no way you don't hit the portal. There is no way.
I think it's a little bit of panic mode. I'm going to kick it back to Brian. Sorry for cutting you off, Brian. I just wanted to point that out because that was a very good note by you talking about how it was all SEC Big Ten except for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. I did want to say I was about to mention that Oregon did have a hell of a day today. They ended up flipping 2 5-star players, one from Cal, I believe, and the other one I can't remember where he's committed to, but he was
I think it was the cornerback that was committed to Ohio State.
Cornerback, Ohio State, yes.
That Neem Oford guy, he flipped from Ohio State for Oregon today. What a get. Wow.
So on some websites, I know we're referencing 247, but there's some websites Oregon pushed as high as 2 in the rankings. So, I mean, they're a team to be down the stretch there from recruiting standpoint too, with those massive flips here the day of signing day. But yeah, like I said, Big Ten, SEC dominant. A lot of 5 stars staying the majority of the 5 stars are staying inside the top 20 in the Big Ten and the SEC. So we're going
Yeah.
to see that come to fruition here in the next few years when a lot of these guys are on the field as everyday down starters.
So let's talk a little bit about Oregon here. If I remember correctly, I think Dante Moore left UCLA last year, transferred in, and he was a 5-star quarterback. Transferred from UCLA to Oregon, the 5-star quarterback last year, and now they just signed, and they already have Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart. I think Tez Johnson will probably go to the draft, right? But I think Evan Stewart will probably hang around another year. I'm drawing a blank on the other stud receiver that they have there that's this season. But then you see them land DeCorian Moore, who was the #1 receiver in the class, and Dallas Wilson, who was the #4 receiver in the class. Just talk about Dan Lanning loading up. I think these guys, and obviously we got some Nike money here we're talking about too, right? And we heard them talk about how they're going to pay for a championship, and I mean they're proving that. But also, Oregon is a very enticing school to play for. They're now in the Big Ten. They have tons of money. They have sweet ass uniforms that, I mean, when I was 18 years old, all I wanted to talk about was Oregon's uniforms, and I wasn't even an Oregon
You
fan.
guys
I mean,
see?
it's incredible, dude, what they do. And Dan Lanning is such a player's coach and such like a cool guy. He's got some moxie. Like, what a cool guy to play for and prove that he's actually a really good X's and O's coach as well. Fellas, I think truly, in my opinion, I think we will see Oregon be the most dominant powerhouse team over the course of the next like 5 to 7 years. I'm very confident in saying that with like, the way they're recruiting, their facilities. It's just they're going to be tough to beat down the stretch in the next 5 to 7 years. Like I'm very, very secure in that statement.
I think they're following the path of Clemson from 2015 to 2020, where
Yes.
they're not in the SEC or Big Ten, but they're an absolute powerhouse every year. And I think Oregon's kind of backfilling that void that Clemson has probably left now.
And let me ask you this, Bryant and Dave. Like, do you think Oregon going to the Big Ten gave them that like step up? Like it gave like the recruits like another, hey, okay, now I'm no longer playing in the Pac-12. I'm playing big boy football in the Big Ten. Like we're ratcheting it up. I want to go there now and be in the Power 2 conference.
I think it definitely helped, but I don't think it helped a drastic amount. I mean, they were already pulling a lot of good players out there, even when
They
they were in
were.
the Pac-12. But you've definitely seen an uptick, and we saw it today with flipping 2 5 stars in one day. That's pretty much unheard of, even in this time of college football. So I definitely think it helped a little bit. But I think just keeping Dan Lanning there and the on-field success that you see with him, as well as a recruiter he is too, I think that bodes well for them as too. So I think it definitely helped, but like I said, they were still pulling players, even 10 years ago over there in Eugene when they were in the Pac-12 and even Pac-10 days.
So per 247 Sports, Oregon got 4 5-star recruits. 2 were receivers I just talked about, and 2 were cornerbacks. Dude, that's incredible. If you can land 2 5-star cornerbacks and they hit, you are going to be a problem for anybody and everybody. And why I'm saying that is like you can go back and I'm not making an Oregon Mizzou comparison here, but like the first thing that comes to my mind, you go back and look at Mizzou last year when they had 2 cornerbacks that could man cover. Dude, that allows your defense to play completely free. Like that, if these guys hit for Oregon, that allows their defense to have linebackers just roam around. That allows the safeties to roam around. That allows them to, blitz 5 or 6 guys if they want to because they can trust their cornerbacks. I mean, that is so huge that I think cornerbacks is one of the most underrated gets in recruiting, in my opinion. When you have good lockdown cornerbacks, you can do so much on the defensive side of the ball.
See, I agree. I'm right on board with Bryant with Oregon. And to your point, Colin, you talked about how you loved the uniforms back in the day. Like even as at a younger age, like Oregon has always been that presence, but I feel like they haven't hit that next step for so many years. And I think I don't know who the athletic director is at the University of Oregon, but they're probably getting some nice bonuses over there because the University of Oregon has just made good moves in the last couple of years. I mean, just getting Dan Lanning was huge. Like that, I feel like when it
That
comes
was a
down,
huge get, man.
yeah, and I feel like when it comes to football programs, like yes, there's going to be people that are going to win, but like you throw them in a different scenario and they fail. We've seen it time and time again, but Dan Lanning just keeps winning. He just continues to improve. Like you guys said, their facilities are insane. I mean, I do remember
Everything is insane there,
I
and
do
it's
remember in
all
high
it's
school
all
watching
Nike.
a University of Oregon, like what the new player thing is, and they were showing like their locker rooms, all the gear they get. I mean, it's boxes of gear. Like, who
Yeah,
doesn't want to go there? Like, they're a
yeah.
dope school, and I agree
You
with you.
got Nike tracksuits for a month, dude. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
I
guarantee
mean,
you,
it's
whatever you want from Nike, you can get it. No questions asked, especially if you are performing at this level and they're potentially going to win I'm going to go ahead and say it. I've said it from day one. You guys can go back to our day one podcast. I said Oregon's going to win it all, and I was kind of
we
iffy towards
we
like
both did.
I
If
was
you
kind of
remember
like I
correctly,
don't
we
know,
both
like
said Oregon wins the national championship and goes undefeated this season.
yeah,
And hey, man, I'm not saying it's a guarantee because it's definitely not, but it looks really good right now. I mean, I think they have been through and through the most dominant team this season, and that obviously helps us recruiting. But before we move on any further, too, I want to talk about the number one player in the country, Bryce Underwood. Did he actually end up signing today? Do you guys know?
Yes.
yeah.
He did end up signing because last I looked, he
Mhm.
hadn't signed yet. So Bryce Underwood signed. I'm assuming nothing crazy happened in the last 15 minutes that I missed, and he signed with Michigan. And what a get for the University of Michigan because we
How much
have
do you think they
shit
paid for him?
all over. Oh, that's like 2.5 mil. They had his NIL evaluation out there.
Yeah,
It's
there's
somewhere in the 2 mils, right?
some oil billionaire is pumping a bunch of money into Michigan right now. I read that online.
Yeah, I think there's some other guy that runs a sports network out there that is dumping tons of money into the Michigan
Yeah, that's
program as
also true.
well. So I
Yeah.
mean, they have some NIL money coming out. They're wiping their ass with $100 bills right now, so good for them. Because I mean, we shit on them all year long about how bad their quarterbacks were. So I would imagine that Bryce Underwood comes in day one starter for Michigan because they don't have any other better options, and I think they're absolutely asinine. This is just me. I think they're asinine if they go get a transfer quarterback because you just spent all this money bringing in this top of the country Bryce Underwood, who I've watched tons of film on, does look incredible. And that there's a reason he's the number one recruit in the country.
See,
So
Colin, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think you do bring a transfer. You make him fight
no,
for that spot because
Not at
listen,
all.
but look at what are their backups? Do you want that as your backup? Let's say he gets hurt.
I let me be honest. I Alex Orji, I don't believe he's a senior, right? I think he's got more eligibility. There's no way Alex Orji transfers out of Michigan. So I mean, he could give him a push. I don't think it's gonna be much of a push, but Alex Orji's not gonna go anywhere else in the Power Two and get a starting job. So he just needs to kind of sit where he's at. And I'm gonna be the first to tell you right now. I'm sorry, Alex Orji. I don't want to upset you, but you're definitely not a pro style quarterback. So you're like this is it for you. So ride the wave with Michigan and hope you can hitch your wagon to them and they get really good in the next couple of years while you're there. Also, real quick, I want to talk about Andrew Babaloa, an absolute stud offensive tackle from Overland Park, Kansas, who committed to Michigan. He was the number 2 offensive tackle in the country, and Mizzou was in contention with Andrew Babaloa down the stretch. So it's cool just to hear that Mizzou was even in contentions for top players in the country like this. And at one point, it looked like he was going to go to Stanford because he was really, devout to his education. So I respected the hell out of that. Now I'm kind of pissed off at the guy for last minute getting away from the education and going to Michigan. So what a get for Bryce Underwood to protect his blind side at Michigan as well. And Michigan finishes up with the number 7 ranked class in the country today. And also we have down here USC, only 5 in-state commits. And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong or if either one of you disagree, step in. USC should be the face of college football in California, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
There's nobody else that can compete there.
so I mean, is it panic mode for USC? I mean, they got some guys transferring out. They had some early transfer portals mid-season. Like, is it
I'd
panic time?
be I'd be more worried about the hiatus that has been the players that were on the team already than not getting more than 5 commits from California. Um, I feel like USC in recent years and even in the past has generally branched out outside of California a lot for a lot of players other than in-state guys. So I don't think that's quite as alarming. So I wouldn't put too much behind that. But the fact that Lincoln Riley threw his quarterback under the bus and now he's transferring a bunch of other people that are transferring, and like you mentioned, in-season guys that after they played 4 games were like, "No, we're leaving." I think that's more of an issue right now.
I mean, and to kind of back you up on this, I mean, they still finished 13th in the country today in
Hmm.
recruiting rankings and signed the number 4 quarterback in the country who signed Longstreet. So, I mean, anytime you compare a quarterback like that with Lincoln Riley, I mean, that's lethal. And I don't want to speculate too much or maybe really dive too much into this um, tweet I saw out there today. Excuse me, is Lincoln Riley supposedly has like some interest in UCF, and UCF has interest in Lincoln Riley. Sure, does that?
I
There's
did
no
see that.
way that happens, right? There's
I
no
also
way
saw
that
a report
happens.
that they're thinking about hiring Scott Frost back too. So
Good God, that I
they
mean, we're
might
talking
be
two totally different coaches right there.
they might be blowing a bunch of smoke and just playing
So
the game.
my thing is, if you're Lincoln Riley, if I'm Lincoln Riley with a 10-year, $100 million contract, I'm gonna try to stay there as long as I can and keep making these 10 million every year. And then if they fire me, it is what it is. I'll go. He can find another good program to coach
I
at.
mean, if he gets fired, they still got to buy him out. I mean, there's no like
That's what I'm saying. There's no
that.
way they buy him out. There's no
Yeah,
way they buy him out.
he's in Jimbo Fisher position right now.
Yes, he
Yeah.
is. I mean, he's in that moment like, okay, fire me. Like I'm okay if you fire me. Actually, like this might be better for me. I can sit on my couch. But
I did want to bring one thing up before we finish this off. I don't know if there's anything behind this, or I've also seen some people trying to strike this down, but we were talking about Oregon, and I have seen a few reports that Dan Lanning may be interested in an NFL position, possibly.
That would be a
Now,
big blow.
that would be the only thing that would derail that train. I don't see that happening with how much I think he likes coaching there and the money that they can pay to keep him there. But you never know. Sometimes coaches hop into the NFL from college. It's happened before. But just some things I read. I don't know how much it might have been some guy speculating, but just something I
that would
saw
be the
that caught my eye.
craziest. I like if I had Dan Lanning's phone number, like I would call him and be like, dude, that is the dumbest thing I think you could ever do in your entire life. You
Gentlemen, let me.
absolutely have it made at Oregon. Like they are worshiping the ground you walk on. They're drinking the water after you drink it. Like they are like you are a match made in heaven right now. Don't screw this up.
Yep. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of people striking down this report, whether it was a speculative report or opinion or actually had some truth behind it. But
I hope it was. And I don't even like Oregon.
yeah,
What?
Well,
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to ask you guys, going to that topic, if you could be successful and, leaving success side, let's say you could be very successful as a football coach. Would you rather coach in the NFL or would you rather coach in
No.
college?
I say no. I have two answers. With the NIL and the transfer portal and shit in college, it's got to be a ton of work. Like the workload has to be
I was going to say,
unbelievable. But also in the NFL, like I can't say you have less control of your players, but like you're actually coaching like full blown grown men. And I feel like that would be tough, especially like if you're a younger coach. So I mean, I don't know, man. I'm a college guy, so I'm gonna say college. I don't even
Oh, for
watch
sure.
the NFL much anymore because I love college football so much more. And I'm gonna say college, but it's got to be a ton more work.
I would
What
say
about
depending
Brian?
on the workload you can handle, the NFL is definitely less. But there is a lot more scrutiny on you, I feel like, in the NFL than there is in college. But
For sure,
I think
for
that
sure.
personally, I would say the NFL. That's just me, just because of having to deal with transfer portal and have to recruit your team and people outside your team 365 days a year. I feel like that would get old really fast.
You know the best job in the country. Then I want to talk about Mizzou, and then I want to move on because we spent some time on this. But the best job in the country to me is Chip Kelly, just being the offensive coordinator at Ohio
Yep.
State. I mean, that
Hmm.
dude's a high-paid offensive coordinator. I mean, obviously he has to just focus on like not losing his offensive players and building a good offensive scheme. But dude, like that guy's got it made right now. So before we move on to the transfer portal discussion, let's talk about the Missouri Tigers signing day. I drew a blank. Sorry. Missouri Tigers signing day. Headlined by quarterback Matt Zollers out of Royersford, Pennsylvania. And it came down to, I believe, Mizzou and Penn State. And he took a late visit to Penn State. Really had me nervous as a Mizzou Tiger fan and knowing that we need some quarterback depth. I was kind of shitting my britches there for a little bit, thinking that maybe he was going to go ahead and flip to Penn State. Backed up by Donovan Olugbodi, a wide receiver 4-star from Bradenton, Florida, and a late flip sign, last-minute move by the Missouri Tigers, Javion Hilson, edge rusher from, is it Cocoa, Florida?
Boca, Florida, and
And
he's actually a 5-star on some websites.
I saw he was a 5-star per Rivals, and I think per Rivals he was like
16th in the
maybe
country.
even the number 1 or 2 like edge rusher on Rivals' site as well. Last I looked.
Yep, number 1 defensive end in the nation according to them. So
Kept the top recruit in Missouri,
yep.
Jack Lang, offensive tackle from Eureka, Missouri. Absolutely huge.
Hey, that's
huge
right down the
get.
street, baby.
I think the 2 flips that we got this week are underrated. We flipped a running back from Kentucky, 4-star Marquise Davis, and then we flipped a wide receiver from Pitt, 4-star Damarion Fulks. Both highly recruited players. They had over 20 offers from. They could have went pretty much anywhere in the country. So those are all massive, big 3 flips for Mizzou in the last week. With some guys leaving Mizzou to go to other schools that were highly rated. We kind of backfilled that nicely.
Absolutely. Hey, and we kept the number 2 recruit in the state of Missouri, Dayton Hopkins, who was an edge rusher from Herman, Missouri. Big boy, 6'6", 210. So, I mean, Mizzou is really bolstering the trenches, and I like that a lot. And I just wanted to touch on those guys a little bit. I think Matt Zollers actually has, and obviously you can say that every time you sign a quarterback, but I think Matt Zollers truly does have a lot of the intangibles that you're looking for. Watched a lot of film on him. Can run well, move well. He did have a hell of an ankle injury in high school this year, so hopefully that doesn't hold him back too much. I don't anticipate him being ready to start this coming season, so we got to dip in the transfer portal a little bit unless Sam Orn pulls a rabbit out of a hat. But, I mean, he hasn't played quarterback in live football game in, 2.5, 3 years at this point. So, I think Matt Zollers is the guy down the stretch. And, like I said, can run well, ton of arm strength, looks to be very smart with the ball. I'm looking really forward to this class. And what a good follow-up by Drink from the 2024 class. And to check in at the top 20 after National Signing Day. That's good stuff from Mizzou, man. I mean, this is really good stuff.
I used to beg for Mizzou to be within top 30, and now it seems like with Drink and how we're playing in recent years, we're almost cemented in top 25, top 20 at least.
Yeah, this is good stuff here. So not going to spend too much time on that. Just wanted to touch on some of those guys a little bit. Let's talk the top transfer portal guys. I'm going to go down kind of the list that we have made and talk about who we think might be some top 10 guys that not necessarily just Mizzou should be after, but we're going to talk mostly quarterbacks here and some top skill positions elsewhere. But this is no particular order, just 10 guys that we want to rattle off here and talk a little bit about. We have Jackson Arnold, the quarterback from Oklahoma. Miller Moss, the quarterback from USC. Connor Wegman, the quarterback from Texas A&M. John Mateer, the quarterback from Washington State. Caden Salter, the quarterback from Liberty. KC Concepcion, the wide receiver from NC State. CJ Daniels, the wide receiver from LSU. Dane Key, the wide receiver from Kentucky. Jaheim Oates, defensive lineman from Alabama. And Micah Hudson, the wide receiver from Texas Tech, who, if people remember correctly, was, I think, the number 3 or 4 ranked receiver in the 2024 class last year. So, fellas, I mean, you pick a guy and dive in on him a little bit. We don't touch on everybody, or we can even keep it like this. If you're the Missouri Tigers and you need some guys off this list, handpick 2 and tell me what you like here.
I'm gonna go ahead and talk about KC Concepcion. Just because he's from my hometown, Raleigh, North Carolina, or no, he's not from there, but he played there. So for me, it's huge. He's actually from Charlotte. So he's still a North Carolina guy. I was really hoping this was NC State's year, clearly with Grayson McCall not panning out whatsoever, and then him, being done with football as a whole. The quarterback position over at NC State was just not good, and it's not good for a wide receiver. You want a good quarterback that's going to get you the ball. Even going back to Mizzou, how Luther Burden just wasn't getting those deep balls that we needed him to get, and it just came down to Brady Cook could make those deep throws. But even that with that, he still had, 53 receptions, 460 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging about 8.7. So not bad considering there was really nobody throwing the football. I mean, I could probably toss the rock a little better than Grayson McCall, and that's even before the injuries.
I mean, those numbers aren't great, but anybody that knows college football knows that Concepcion is an absolute monster. He's a receptions machine. He is a guy that just like runs crisp routes, knows how to get open, knows how to get separation. And if you called me tomorrow and broke the news to me that Concepcion was coming to Mizzou, I would go ape shit. I would love it. I would think this would be the best offseason get for Mizzou unless we sign one of these top quarterbacks. So I love the pick, Dave. Love Concepcion. Bryant, who do you kind of have your sights set on here?
Personally, I think it's Jackson Arnold. Honestly, I know he just came into the portal today, right before we filmed this from Oklahoma, transferring out from there. Um, he was a Elite 11 champion in the high school Elite 11 quarterback showcase they have, 5-star recruit, comes to Oklahoma, has all the wide receivers he wants to play, has a really good offensive line, and then that just totally goes to the shitter during the season. Um, Lost basically all of his receivers to injury. All the line was banged up. He was just running for his life, and then had some turnovers based on that. But now he's transferring out, and I think all the intangibles are still there. And I read a really cool kind of comparison that I thought was spot on. He was comparing him to Bo Nix from when he left Auburn. In his junior season, Bo Nix had like the same or a little bit less passing yards, 2 less touchdowns, and 1 more interception than Jackson Arnold had at Oklahoma with a very similar type scenario. So, and then he went to Oregon and absolutely balled out and has a chance to maybe be rookie of the year in the NFL. So that's a good comparison. I'm not saying if he goes wherever he's going to be to the next Bo Nix, but I think Jackson Arnold is probably the most complete quarterback that's in this transfer portal as it sits right now, as far as playing against Power Five opponents, doing decent, and then still having the intangibles to kind of take that step up, have a higher ceiling, and maybe a little bit higher floor than some of these other guys.
Yeah, I'll be honest too. I think Jackson Arnold for me is the top get in the portal as it sits. I think there are tons more players, and I'm going to throw a hot take out here before we wrap up the transfer portal talk about some guys I think you could see enter the portal. And but right now as it sits, yes, Jackson Arnold for sure would be an absolute huge get for anybody out there that's looking for a quarterback. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Miller Moss and then CJ Daniels. Miller Moss to me is a guy with, I talked about this earlier with like Dan Lanning having some moxie as a coach. I think Miller Moss has some moxie as a quarterback. I think you put him in the right system and put some talent around him. I think the guy can win you football games. I really do. I think the guy has what it takes to make the routine throws. He's got a pretty deep ball when he needs to. And I mean, he had 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So you got to clean up the interceptions for sure if he comes to your program. And I do like the fact that he's a little seasoned. He played behind Caleb Williams. He didn't really play, but he backed up Caleb Williams, saw what a really talented quarterback at the college level could do. And I think Miller Moss has those desires. And so for me, I really like what Miller Moss has to bring. I mean, he's a really just talented quarterback. He's not a little guy. He's not huge, but he's 6'2", 205, somewhere in that range. I like what he brings to the table. So I would love if you guys called me and said that, hey man, Mizzou just got Miller Moss. I would love if you guys called me and said, hey man, Mizzou just got Jackson Arnold. I mean, I wouldn't be upset about any of that. And last I read, to be honest with you, Mizzou is actually in on Miller Moss. I don't know about Jackson Arnold. He's fresh to the portal, so that's fresh blood in the water. I'm sure Mizzou's probably going to be in on most of these quarterbacks that we just talked about. So love Miller Moss, love Jackson Arnold. I wouldn't be upset about the Connor Wegman news, but I would prefer the other two that we just talked about. Real quick, too, I want to talk a little bit about CJ Daniels, who is a receiver from LSU, absolute stud. You didn't hear his name all that much just because LSU is LSU, man. They shit wide receivers left and right. Kyron Lacey was there. Aaron Anderson was there. I mean, so they had plenty of guys to receive the football for them. But CJ Daniels is an absolute stud, man. He's a big boy. Another guy, 6'2", 205. I think he's got 1 year of eligibility left and had 42 receptions, 480 yards this season. And I think he would fit very well into a Missouri Tigers offense. Could really come in and honestly be like your number one guy. I think he has that ability. So would love CJ Daniels. They talked about Concepcion. Would love Concepcion. I don't think the Concepcion has any chance for Mizzou at all. I don't think that one really meshes much. So would love some of these guys we talked about. And to kind of wrap up the transfer portal stuff, because a lot of it is fully speculation at this moment, because they can't remind everybody, you can't really talk too much about the transfer portal just yet, like we can, but like the players can't, because technically right now I think it's only graduate transfers that are technically really entered into the portal. The rest of this stuff is guys that are just to be entered in the portal, like showing interest to the portal. So not a lot of news breaking on a lot of these things, but I'm going to go ahead and take my hot takes here, and you guys can call me crazy, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. There's 3 names for me that come to mind as quarterbacks that I think that could find their way into the portal at some point this off season. Now, 2 of them is if they decide to not go to the NFL. And I think one of those guys being Jalen Milroe. I think if Jalen Milroe decides to not go to the NFL, I feel like Jalen Milroe could find himself in the portal. And many of reasons behind that. I don't want to spend tons of time on this because, like I said, it's speculation. But yes, like Dave is making the money sign right now. He would be the number 1 guy in the portal, I would assume, unless this other guy I'm about to drop 2 goes into it. And you're essentially a free agent, man. Why would you not? Like, why would you not? And I think for me, you see Kalen DeBoer, like Kalen DeBoer is solely focused on winning football games. And I respect the hell out of that. I think for me, Jalen Miller wants to go somewhere where like a coach can polish him into be a better passer, not just so that he can use his legs, right? So I think for me, that may be on the back of Milroe's mind, especially if they don't end up winning a national championship. And he may still do it if they win a national championship. And hell, he may go to the NFL. Another guy that I have in mind here a little bit is Quinn Ewers. I think that may sound crazy too. I think if he doesn't go to the NFL, I think he's had enough of the Arch Manning bullshit, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think he dislikes Arch Manning. I don't have anything to back this up either. Just some of the antics I see on the sidelines, some of the things that you see when Arch Manning's in the game. So for me, if Quinn Ewers doesn't go pro, I think that you could see him dip into the portal. And also why I think that too is I think maybe being banged up a little bit and not necessarily having the most spectacular season that people were expecting. I think that maybe he thinks he can get his draft stock a little bit higher going into the next season. So could totally see that happening. And to be honest with you as well, fellas, he didn't have the most talent around him, and they've had success still. But like, he doesn't have the best receiving core in the country by any stretch. He's got a really good offensive line. He lost like his top 2 running backs to help take the pressure off of him. So I think maybe Quinn Ewers could step in and dip in and try to find a different situation that he wants to go fit in. And the last one, this is just a fire from the hip because I think things ended so badly for them this season. Avery Johnson from Kansas State. I could totally see Avery Johnson dipping into the portal and trying to find a new home. And I think he would get paid as well. So just 3 guys that I have in mind real quick. If you guys want to touch on that, tell me what you think. Tell me if you think any of those are possible, makes sense. And then we can move on.
Colin, to your point, I think this year, I think moving forward, I think we're going to have a lot more players in the transfer portal, not necessarily because they want to go anywhere, because they're going to leverage this. They're going to put their name in the portal just to kind of light the seat under whether it's the coach or the athletic department and say, hey, you need to offer me more money because otherwise I'm leaving. And it's a smart move.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't do it? But I think everyone's going to start, unless, the athletic department comes to you and says, hey, listen, we're going to give you a little extra this year. You did all right. Kind of like Jalen Milroe. I think that's one of those situations where Alabama might have to dish out a little extra money because I don't think Jalen Milroe truly wants to go anywhere. But if the money's there, I'm going, just like anybody would. Because to your point, like, for example, Quinn Ewers, right now his stock is not very high. But
I think it's still high.
I guess what I mean is, like, for him, he might be better off just getting a big bag from another big college program. He could probably make more money at this point by going to another big program, getting that NIL deal. There's not as much pressure, and he's secured the bag. And then he can always go to the NFL down the road, because he's probably going to get drafted regardless. I think, even if he has
for sure.
a similar year to this year. So if anything, staying in next year can only help him. And if he can make a little extra money, make an extra $2-3 million, or, I don't know. I don't know what he's even making at Alabama, but I do think there's going to be a lot of movement in the transfer portal. I know Brian's got something churning in there. I see him thinking over there. What do you got, Brian?
I think money is an issue, but I don't know if it's necessarily the entire issue. I like what Colin touched on with Milroe. I think a lot of these players, yeah, they've done their time at their schools. they are getting paid well and they like it there, but they want to go to a coach that can prepare them for the next level, for them to get drafted higher, and for them to be NFL players, because that's where all these guys want to do. Yeah, they're playing college football right now and they're making good NIL packages. They're loved by their fan bases, but it's time for a lot of them, possibly like you mentioned with Milrow and Ewers, to worry about the next level and how can I become a better quarterback on the field, not and also not just my pocketbook.
Yep, I think they want to polish and fine tune their game and kind of perfect their craft before they go to the next level, because we see a lot of quarterbacks go to the next level and end up in like a bad situation and their career just spirals at a rapid pace. And I don't think any of these guys want to do that. So that's just like I said, a lot of this is speculation. I don't have anything to back any of this up. Just a lot of things that I was thinking about, reading about, diving into. So just wanted to throw that out there, especially because if it does happen, I want to make sure that Deep Threat Sports Network was first. I mean, if we miss, we miss. Who gives a shit? But if that news breaks, I want everybody to know that hey, we were on this shit and we had serious conversation and thoughts that this could happen. So now we spent a lot of time on recruiting and transfer stuff. Let's dive into the playoff rankings. And we wanted to take a day to digest this because I'm baffled, and I think this can go a ton of different ways, but I'm truly baffled. Real quick, just to read the rankings off to everybody. I'm sure everybody's seen them by now, but just to touch up and brush up on that and get everybody knowledgeable with what we're talking about. Oregon 1, Texas 2, SMU 3, Boise State 4, Penn State 5, Notre Dame 6, Georgia 7, Ohio State 8, Tennessee 9, Indiana 10, Alabama 11, Arizona State 12. I'm gonna let you guys go first and tell me like what are your thoughts on how this shaped up?
I'm gonna let you go ahead, Bryant. You hit it first because I feel like you got a lot of good information that we got to make sure we get.
So we basing this off who's going to make it into the bracket?
No,
Because I thought Miami
I
was
think
12.
for no these are just like the actual playoff, like the playoff bracket right here.
You
This
mean
is just how they're
you mean the
supposed
top
to be.
25?
You're talking about bracket. You're not talking about 1 through 12 on the rankings.
Correct. I'm talking about the
Okay.
playoff bracket, how this sets up, and not really like who we think's going to get in. More along the sense of like, how do you feel about where these guys are seated? Like, are you okay with how this shaped up? And not even if we think they're going to end up remaining in that spot after conference weekend. Just how do you feel about what they released Tuesday night?
I think it's fair. I think Alabama's obviously getting too much credit, but you can dive into that in a multitude of ways, and you can see easily why they're there. You can see easily why they're not. Um, I think what we see still there is the SMU is being favored now, which is pretty good. I think they're being favored to win the conference championship this weekend and get to the top four. The Big 12 is still seen as the what we had thought of as the Group of Five spot all season. They're now going to be probably the 12th spot there with Arizona State. I think that's correct. Um, all in all, I think it's fair. I think Ohio State maybe should have slid a little bit more than they did just because of that loss to Michigan. But there really wasn't a whole terrible amount, a lot of movement. I think they got it pretty well right this week, other than maybe who should be in that 11 spot, other than Alabama.
Yeah, I don't have the right answer, right? This is just opinion based for me. I don't love Alabama at 11 at all. I really don't. I think for me is you have a 9-3 South Carolina team who is strength of record 11, Alabama strength of record 10, South Carolina strength of schedule 15, Alabama strength of schedule 17, and South Carolina has a loss to LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama with a point differential of -29 in those losses. Alabama has losses to Vandy, Oklahoma, and Tennessee with a -33-point differential in those three losses. And for me, South Carolina's losses are much better than Alabama's. And I know Alabama beat them head to head, but if you line those two teams up right now on a neutral field, my money is going South Carolina. Just 2 weeks ago, we saw Alabama get absolutely shoused by an average Oklahoma team who had just lost to Mizzou. So, like, if people are out there going to shit on Mizzou and say that they're not that good, well, Mizzou just beat Oklahoma, and Alabama just got absolutely dog walked by that same Oklahoma team. So for me, it's really tough to say that I think it should have been Alabama because I don't. I think
The
South
head-to-head
Carolina's.
I think it's the head-to-head win that Alabama had against them is what they're favoring so much in this spot.
I think it was the head-to-head win, and I think it was the win over Georgia. I think is why Alabama truly got in. I think that South Carolina's wins over Oklahoma A&M, who Oklahoma team that beat Alabama, by the way. Oklahoma A&M, Vandy, a team that beat Alabama, by the way. Mizzou and Clemson with a plus 78 in those games. Those are big wins for them. And Alabama beats Georgia, South Carolina, Mizzou, LSU with a plus 72. They are very comparable teams. I guess really I'm just going off eye test the last like 6 weeks. Dude, South Carolina looks like they could beat anybody on any football field right now in the last 6 weeks. I really believe that. They are really, really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about on this network.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, no. I was going to say, we've talked about it on this network, how we think very highly of South Carolina. Like, they're gonna give you a hard time, and they're looking like they're on the rise right now. They're looking really
well,
good.
All season we talked about if Lenore Sellers can just be okay, like they're going to be very successful because of that defense. And Lenore Sellers has really ratcheted it up, came back from that ankle injury, seems to be healthy on that ankle now, and is an absolute problem for opposing teams.
Yeah, I think the real argument here is between the three loss, teams that are worth it in the SEC and Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama, and then I think your only other consideration here for this last spot is Miami.
Yeah.
And personally, Miami's 2 losses really aren't that bad. It was to a granted Syracuse team they probably should have beat, but the other one was to Georgia Tech that just took Georgia to 8 overtimes. So
yeah, dude. Yeah,
I
with a
mean,
strength of record of 14. Now the
yeah.
schedule's
So
not very good.
personally, if I was making the rankings, I think I would have kept Alabama out and kept Miami in there at 11. But that's just me. And then you could also make an argument with Ole Miss. Yeah, they did have some bad losses to Kentucky and Florida, but they're arguably maybe probably better losses than Alabama had. So I don't
Yes.
know. It's weird dynamic there for this kind of last piece to go in as it sits right now before conference week.
And Lane Kiffin's using the shit on social media, by the way. But
So is
Ole
Cam
Miss,
Ward. Cam Ward was ripping them too.
Ole Miss's strength of record is 18, strength of schedule 31. With the win over South Carolina, this is just their big wins that I have wrote down. With the win over South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Georgia with a plus 54 differential in those games. I go up here and slide up to my notes on Miami, and Miami was 10-2. And everybody here knows I love Miami. And I'm gonna before we move on from Miami, I saved them for last because I'm about to shit all down Mario Cristobal's throat here in a second. But Miami goes 10-2 this season with a strength of record of 14, strength of schedule of 55, and like you touched on, a loss to Georgia Tech and a loss to Syracuse, and they had a -9 differential in those 2 losses. So less single-digit points is why they lost 2 games. Okay, with the win against Florida, ended up being a pretty damn good win down the stretch against the Florida team that proved that they were way better than anybody thought they were going to be. And I think what hurts them is their next best wins are over Louisville and Duke. Mm-hmm. Now, Miami should be, well, I can't say should be because they've had some games earlier on in the season that they probably should have lost, right? But we moved on from that. I want to talk real quick about what in God's name Mario Cristobal was doing at the end of this football game against Syracuse. And a reminder, Miami was up 21-0. 21-0, looking like it was going to be an absolute boat race, run Syracuse right out of their own stadium, and all they had to do was win, and they were in. That's all they had to do. But you have heard Bryant and I especially talk so much this season on this podcast about how some point Mario Cristobal is going to get this football team. And Mario Cristobal got this football team against Syracuse. He allowed this Syracuse offense to start picking apart this Miami defense. How do you not at some point come up with a game like you made Kyle McCord look like he should win the Heisman? That's not a joke. Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely shredded this Miami defense, who on paper shouldn't be that bad of a defense. Now,
they're bad.
They were so bad. And now let's focus on Miami's last drive of the football game. Okay. They hadn't got a stop on defense in 2.5 quarters. 2.5 quarters. Understand what I'm saying? 2.5 quarters. They have not got a stop on defense. Okay. They are coming down. They're down 7, roughly 3 minutes on the clock. It ends up being 4th and goal because of some penalties. It was like first and goal from like the 6, I think. Then they get backed up on a 15-yarder. Then they get backed up again. Then it's like second and goal from the 25. They end up getting it to 4th and 6 and 2 plays on the goal line. They're down 7 and he kicks a field goal. Somebody please make this make sense to me why you kicked this field goal. I was ready to come on air Saturday night and talk about this, but I couldn't because I was actually that mad. I was actually that mad that I could not come on here and talk without dropping F-bombs and making myself look like an idiot. So I needed some time to digest what really happened. And I'm still just as mad now that I bring it up. Does he not realize that you haven't got to stop on defense? You're down 7 with like 3 minutes left, and you've already used 1 timeout, so you only have 2 left. You are trusting your defense over the best offense. I will die on this hill. The best offense in the country from the 6-yard line. What are you doing? You still need a touchdown to go win the football game. Like you couldn't kick a field goal and go to overtime. You still needed a touchdown to go win the football game. This was the worst coaching mistake I have seen in college football, and since his coaching mistake last year against Georgia Tech to run the ball instead of kneeing it and losing the football game. I mean, this dude is an idiot, total dipshit.
It's like he's trying to coach a demon in his head against a demon in his head, and I don't understand, especially the field goal. Where there's been multiple times this season where we're baffled by some of his decisions. Like you mentioned, trying to trust your defense. That's been horrible all season and was horrible in this game. It made absolutely no sense. And also, why isn't the offensive coordinator or somebody else on that sideline stepping in and be like, "Hey, man, are you sure you want to kick this field goal?" Like they just let him run full reign on the sideline, and like whatever he says goes. I get your head coach, but sometimes you got to be open to feedback from somebody else.
It was, hey, this is why they're not making the playoffs. And right after that happened,
he might just crash their whole season.
He did. And right after that happened, I texted you guys and said he just cost them the playoffs. Dude, Cam Ward was averaging 9.7 yards per pass. Damian Martinez was averaging 8.4 yards per carry. Restrepo, 16.4 yards per reception. Jacoby George, 20.2 yards per reception. And Elijah Arroyo, 8.8 yards per reception. Cam McCormick, 7. Isaiah Horton, 6.5. Mark Fletcher, 9. You mean to tell me you couldn't find somebody in this high-powered best offense in the country to go get you 6 yards with the season on the line? What are you doing? And hear me out. If you don't get it, Mario, guess what? You still have those 2 timeouts, the 2-minute warning that you were already banking on, and you have them backed up on the 6.
It made no sense to kick field goal.
Anyway, yeah, I had to get that out of my system because I've been stewing on that for a couple of days now. I'm with you, Bryant. I still do think that Miami should probably find their way into the playoffs because I think if they did get in, I think they can outscore anybody in the playoffs. Now, they got to get a few stops, but I think they could outscore anybody in the playoffs. Cam Ward's the best quarterback in the country. It's a shame that we are not seeing him in the college football playoffs this season the way it looks. I'm confident they're not getting in. There's no way they get in. Like the Ward Manual, the playoff committeeman, president, or whatever the hell his job title is, has made it clear that these are the teams that are going to get in. And unless, UNLV beats Boise State or unless Clemson beats SMU, and then you have the conversation of is it SMU or is it Alabama if Clemson wins? And if that's the case and they don't put SMU in, I'm an SEC guy, but I'm here to tell you if they take SMU out because they lost a conference championship game and punish them for losing an extra game, that is the biggest crock of shit, and this is a failed system, and they should blow it up right out of the gate, in my opinion. That's just the way I feel.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to punish teams for losing a conference championship game, I saw Rhett Lashley talk today. He was like, if I just told everybody my whole team's got COVID and we can't play this game, like we're going to make the playoffs. So why would I go punish myself and maybe lose this football game? So you can't punish a team for losing a conference championship. Can't happen.
Unless they're on the bubble already like Clemson.
Yes. Or like an Iowa State, Arizona State. I'm talking like SMU, who is a one-loss team, front runner all season, been in conversations all season long. Like, that's what I'm referring to. Thank you for clearing that up. But yes, like if it's Clemson, see it. Bye. You lost. You're 9-4. Get the hell out of here. You don't deserve to be in here. They don't deserve to be in the ACC championship game, in my opinion. I somehow wish it was Miami. I would love to see SMU and Miami square off this weekend. It would be so much more fun to me.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, I'm off my soapbox. I got wound up there for a minute. Just I told you guys if Mario Cristobal was in my town, me and him I was gonna find him and we were gonna have a serious conversation about how to coach a football game. Like he would not have been on the plane ride back to Miami if I was the AD of that program. I'm serious.
No, it was that bad. That was, we saw an NFL coach get fired for a horrible late game time decision from this past week, and it should have been a similar situation, in my opinion.
Yep. Yep. You have the best offense. You paid high dollars for this roster. It's best quarterback, and you
Kick a
still
field
couldn't
goal.
do it. What makes you think? What makes anybody think Mario Cristobal can ever do it if he couldn't do it this team? And it's going to be really hard to have a better offense than this ever.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's have some fun now. Let's do what people really want to hear. Let's talk about our picks for the conference championship games, our best bets, and then we'll get out of here. So I'm gonna talk about the conference. I'm gonna give the game, and then I'm going to let Dave and Bryant make their picks, and then I'll make mine. And but we're gonna dissect the games just a little bit before we really make our picks. So first game we're gonna talk about just the big ones, the playoff implication conference championship games. Not the MAC championship. Credit to them, but not going to spend a lot of time on them here. Friday, 7 p.m. on Fox, we have UNLV, Boise State. Boise State currently sitting at -4 with an over-under of 58.5. Bryant, Dave, tell me what you think. Don't really make your pick yet, but kind of dissect this game a little bit. Give us some notes. Tell me what you're seeing here.
Yeah, we saw this game a few weeks back, and Boise State was able to pull out the win. But UNLV will definitely be able to learn from that. We talked about this all season. If Ashton Jeanty gets rolling, Boise State likely is going to win the game. I think UNLV's sole focus in this game is obviously to stop him. I don't think you can stop him completely, but they need to limit him. If they keep playing like they have on offense with Hajj Malik Williams and Ricky White, I think they have a very good chance of winning this game. They're obviously a better passing team than Boise State is. Both still very good on the defensive side of the ball. I'd still lean UNLV has a better defense. So I think this game truly comes down. Is Jeanty going to play this best game? Probably not his best game of the season stats-wise, but can he show up and play like he's been playing all season when it comes down to a playoff berth in this game? So I think it comes down to that right there.
100%. Dave, tell me what you got, big man.
I mean, I have been all about Travis Hunter, and Ashton Jeanty's not that good. I never say he wasn't that good, but I said he really had a lot to prove. And I think if Ashton Jeanty wants to win the Heisman, this is the game where he goes off, he crushes UNLV. It don't matter what they put up against him, he's got to run through them. And I think he is. I think this is his game where he knows this is where he can win the Heisman right here. If he can make a big statement in this game, so I do think he's going to show up. I think he's going to have a heck of a game. And it don't matter what UNLV does. He's going to run through it. We know it don't matter if you put a body there. We know he can break tackles. He's going to have a great game. I really do think so. But on the other end, you do have a better quarterback in UNLV. Madsen, I mean, he has little spurts. But if he can turn it on, if their quarterback's doing well and Ashton Jeanty's running the ball like he knows to do, I think Boise State will win this again. And for Boise State, I think for them, they got something to prove because everyone still doubts them, even though they are probably going to be that fourth team into the playoffs. But I think Boise State, man. I know a lot of people are thinking UNLV, but I just don't see a world where that happens.
So and you guys touched on this really well. So real quick, just a couple of things
One second. Sorry, I just want to make a quick point. Unlike some of these Power 5 conference games, this game is actually at Boise State as a home game. So
yes, thank you.
That also plays a factor.
Yes, and as those lines that I read earlier, Boise State -4, over under 58.5. I just pulled them back up real quick again and check them now, and it's now over under 57.5. So it's been bought down a little bit. But the only thing I really want to add to this, because you guys did a great job here, is the best player on the field, no matter what, is obviously Ashton Jeanty. After that, the best offensive players fall to UNLV. Hajj Malik Williams is a much better quarterback to me than Maddox Madsen. Dave, you are 100% correct. Madsen every once in a while can make some big-time throws, but not consistent enough for me where I am confident that they're going to just go win this football game. Obviously, like Brian just said, this being a home game is huge, but Ricky White, the receiver for UNLV, is a true difference maker. So I think whichever team can generate more pressure on the quarterback and really limit what Ashton Jeanty can do wins this football game. I saw UNLV the last time these two teams squared off on a Friday night. I saw UNLV do a damn good job, especially in the first half, of kind of bottling up Ashton Jeanty. And like I remember watching that game against UNLV, and I was like, damn, man, they might have actually done enough to kind of knock Ashton Jeanty a little bit back in this Heisman conversation. And that is where you saw Ashton Jeanty start to slip on the Heisman standings, was that game. So if they can do the same thing and they know what they're going to get in Ashton Jeanty, now they've already squared off one time. I think Boise State is pretty one-dimensional for me. So I don't love the Boise State offense if Jeanty's bottled up. I mean, that's just my honest answer.
What?
So
has Ashton Jeanty been bottled up this year? That's the thing. They played Oregon.
no, I mean, and I mean, you know how I feel about Ashton Jeanty. I mean, he ran for 192 and 3 touchdowns against Oregon. So I mean, you know how I feel about Ashton Jeanty. I'm not trying to backpedal on that at all. I just think UNLV's defense is good enough to slow down Ashton Jeanty.
So are you saying you think UNLV's defense is better than Oregon's?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. Let's also preface that game was the first game of the season. I'm just saying UNLV has already seen Boise State's offense. I think UNLV already knows that Boise State's offense is very predictable, and I think that UNLV's defense is good enough to slow down Ashton Jeanty. That's all I'm saying. I think they can slow him down, and I love Jeanty. I hope he goes out and breaks Barry Sanders' record in this football game and runs for like 400 yards. That'd be incredible to me because then I can laugh in your face that Hunter's not going to win the Heisman. So like that, I hope that happens. I'm just saying UNLV has enough talent defensively to make this a really good football game.
Yeah, like we've mentioned a few times, I think the key to this game and the entire game, I think, is if Madsen can throw the ball. If he can whatsoever, I think Boise State has a legitimate chance to win this game for sure. But we haven't seen it effective passing from him all season, so it would have to kind of come out of nowhere. And I think it'd be wise for Boise State to scheme some more passes into this game to kind of throw the defense from UNLV off a little bit.
Play action, get it out quick. Motions, yes, that needs to happen. So the next game we're going to talk about is the Big 12 Championship. Saturday, 11 a.m. on ABC. Iowa State versus Arizona State. Arizona State currently sits at -2.5 with the over-under at 49.5. You know, for me, I'm going to make a few quick points and kind of kick it over to you guys. Jordan Tyson is out for Arizona State. He is their leading receiver. He is their only receiver that really was successful at all. And then the next leading receiver on their team is Cam Scatterby, which is also their running back. And he has 291 yards. So an absolute massive loss for Arizona State in this football game. And also Sam Leavitt, he's a really good quarterback, though, for Arizona State. Takes care of the ball, doesn't force anything, doesn't force turnovers. So really good quarterback, but missing the number one target in a conference championship game with everything on the line. Don't love that, I'll be honest. I mean, I think that's a massive loss. And I do love what I see out of Rocco Becht, Jalen Noel, and Jaden Higgins every single week from Iowa State. Those guys are over 1,000 yards receiving this season. They are a hell of a trio. So without telling you that I lean Iowa State before making our picks, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I lean Iowa State. So you guys go ahead and take it from here. Those are the big things for me that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I definitely think Arizona State has played better down the stretch at the end of the season than Iowa State has. But like you mentioned, losing Jordan Tyson was a big blow to their team. But Scatterbo is up there, honestly, with as well as he's playing, he's getting some Heisman hype a little bit too now. I've seen him creeping to the top five in some talks. He's probably a top 5 running back in the country, and Iowa State struggles against the run on defense. On the flip side, Arizona State struggles against the pass on defense, and that's Iowa State's stronghold. So I think this game has a chance to be an old-fashioned Big 12 shootout, no defense being played type game. So you never know. I do agree with you. I think Iowa State has a slightly better team at this point. But that's why they play the game, and we'll see how it comes to fruition on Saturday at 11. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that one. I mean, Iowa State, I think, in not to not give Arizona State any credit, I do think they're a good team. And to Brian's point, yes, they've been playing better down the stretch, but I think just overall, I just think overall Iowa State just has a bit of an edge, And if Arizona State didn't have Cam Scatterbo, I'd be all in. No change.
Well, if Arizona State didn't have Cam Scatterbo, they wouldn't be in this conversation. I mean,
that's also a good point.
They're like very one-dimensional, especially without Jordan Tyson. So, I mean, I totally agree with you, Dave, that I think that with how one-dimensional they're going to have to be in this football game, I think you can see Iowa State's defense take the edge and box and Scatterboo. That is what I'm expecting to happen. Obviously, just making a speculation. That's just my opinion. So I'm with you, Dave. And Brian, I want to agree with you on the over, and I kick this back and forth a little bit, and I'm so back and forth on it because like now I'm sitting here questioning myself now that I hear myself talk about this game. Does Arizona State just limit possessions and literally just run, 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 and let the clock just keep ticking? That's like the only question I have. Otherwise, I'm with you. I think this over
Yeah,
has the potential to hit by a mile.
that's a definite possibility, and I think that's the key to this game. Can Arizona State or can Iowa State stop the run, and can Arizona State stop the passing game for Iowa State? If any of those teams can do that, specifically if Arizona State can, then I definitely think it'll be a slow, low-scoring game. But I just don't see that happening personally. I think it's going to be fast-paced, touchdown, touchdowns, touchdowns. So just because the strongholds of the offense are the weaknesses for the defense. So that's just my opinion, but we'll
Okay.
see.
Absolutely. And real quick, to just throw this in here, we're all going to make our picks against the spread for over unders and spreads after we talk about all these games. And our book it segment this week is going to be anything that we all agree on. If all three of us agree on that pick, that's going to be that's going to be in our book it. We don't have, we're firing from the hip on all of our picks together right here as we go along. So to kind of talk about these last three games real quick and then get into that. Saturday, 3:00 p.m. ABC, Georgia versus Texas for the SEC championship game. We got a rematch here. Texas sitting at -2.5, and the over/under sitting at 49.5. Fellas, take it away.
Before we get going, I am going to go ahead and check out. I did we did do the podcast on date night with the old lady, so
I
she is
know, I get
pregnant.
it, man.
She is pregnant,
Yeah,
so
she's
we got to
nine
give her a
months
good side.
pregnant, Dave. You better behave, man. Get your ass out of here and tell Ashley we hope everything's going well with her and the pregnancy. And you guys are definitely good luck to you guys. The moment's going to be any time. So, Dave, hopefully you can watch some football this weekend, brother. Good luck.
Oh, I'll be watching it, whether it's from the hospital bed or whether it's from my couch. But I'll be watching. But
Ah,
I'll be back on Sunday with you guys, and then we'll go from there.
sounds good, brother. We'll see you. Bryant, take this game away for us.
The old adage is it's hard to beat a team once. It's even harder to beat them twice. I think that kind of applies in this game. Georgia has been playing better down the stretch, even though they went to that 8 overtime game with Georgia Tech. But Georgia Tech is a good football team. Carson Beck has been playing better. They're still a little banged up on the running back position with ETN being out. But who was the freshman? I'm blanking on Frazier. Is it Frazier?
Yes,
Back.
yes,
He's
Frazier.
played very well. So this game's going to be a slobber knocker of an SEC game. I feel like Georgia has a little bit more experience in these games than Texas does at this level. But this is going to be probably one of the better games of the weekend, in my opinion, as far as head-to-head matchup is concerned. On our notes here, Teddy Rutledge being back for Georgia is a big difference. The issues they had on offense throughout the season has been Carson Beck getting pressure in his face and making bad decisions. So that has definitely improved. On the Texas side, Quinn Ewers has stepped up. They've gotten a little healthier, playing a little bit better defense and offensive line play, like we were so high on them at the beginning of the season. So this is going to be a close game, a very tough game to gauge. But that's what we won in the SEC title game.
How much Arch Manning do you think we see since Texas and Sarkisian got to watch Georgia Tech pick on Georgia's defense with the rushing attack last week from Haynes King? Like, do you think we see Arch run the shit out of it?
I think you could see a special package here and there where he comes in and does like a little option kind of RPO type game a little bit. Definitely do think they throw that in there with how Haynes King handled it with him the week before last. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think in an ideal world, you see Quinn Ewers in this whole game, and he just kind of becomes a starter and plays like he has in the majority of the season when he's been healthy, and just dominates the game for him, and plays the whole thing. But I definitely think you can see some special packages where Arch Manning comes in. I mean, he did well last week on a few plays where he ran and dived for that touchdown there on the goal line. So possibility.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what Sarkisian comes up with. He's a brilliant
I
offensive
do think you're
coach.
going to
So
see some wild offensive plays in this game. Some out of
Yes.
the, backside of the playbook type stuff.
Yes, and honestly, I don't have too much to add. I know Texas. I think they're for sure down Kelvin Banks, right? Isn't that his name? The offensive
Mm-hmm.
lineman for them, and that's a big, big loss. And maybe Georgia can generate some pressure coming in off the backup over there. So anxious to see how this game goes down. You nailed it. It's hard to beat a team twice. I've been really back and forth on this football game. Don't really know what I'm going to decide yet later when we talk about our picks. So the next game we'll talk about Saturday, 7 p.m. CBS, Oregon versus Penn State. Oregon sitting at -3.5 with an over under of 49.5. Bryant, what are you seeing here?
Personally, I think this game is going to be very close. I think a lot of people are betting high on Oregon to win this game just because of how well they played all season. I do think one note in this game that's going to maybe be a factor is this is much closer to Penn State than it is to Oregon, with it being in Annapolis. I think there's going to be a lot more Penn State fans there that they might be able to create more of a home environment, which I think will be, maybe a little bit of a factor. It's not going to be a true home game, obviously, but that will be a factor. But Penn State definitely has the intangibles to win this game. It just kind of depends how their offense gets rolling. They can't have an Ohio State type game where they just kind of, being slow, playing a little sloppy here and there. Drew Aller missing some throws and being totally dependent on one player on offense. They got to get Katron Allen and Singleton going in the backfield to be able to win this game. And on the flip side, Dylan Gabriel carves up defenses when he has time. And if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to be able to create pressure in his face and make him make decisions quickly and make him make plays with his legs.
Absolutely. Penn State needs to generate as much pressure as possible and not Gabriel off his game. And I think they need to completely eliminate the best they can the Oregon run game to make everything fall on Dylan Gabriel in this passing attack. And I think they can go win this football game if that happens. Really
Absolutely.
excited for this one. We're really, really excited for this one. Can Penn State find somebody other than I'm drawing what's the tight end's name? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on it. Tyler Warren. Can they find
Tyler
somebody
Williams.
other than Tyler Warren to go be a threat offensively catching the football for Drew Aller? That is
That's the key.
huge here. That is the key. If they can get somebody else, and don't get me wrong, Tyler Warren, everybody knows the ball's going to him, and somehow he still finds the ball and gets open and makes plays. So I mean, credit to them. I mean, they had him line up under center and go catch a pass this year, so they make it work. Andy Kotelnicki is a genius. Another coach that I think is not great is James Franklin. Like big moments, James Franklin shits himself. He got the Mario Cristobal effect. Can he overcome this? This is a moment that would be huge, and I'm going to throw it out there. I talked about this episode 1. I threw a preseason bet in for Penn State to win the Big Ten. So this for me right here is huge. I need James Franklin to head out of ass, have a game plan. Don't let the moment be too big, and go win a football game. Get yourself that first round bye.
Yeah, he has not done it yet, but if there's a game that he needs to do it in a game that's going to happen, this is it. So we'll see if that comes to
Yeah,
fruition.
at least this one's not named Michigan or Ohio State for him. So maybe that
Absolutely.
helps. I don't
Yes.
know. But the last conference championship game we're going to talk about here is a doozy, in my opinion. Saturday, 7 p.m., ABC, Clemson versus SMU. Massive, massive implications on this game. This is one of the only conference games other than the Big 12, I guess the Mountain West as well, where if you lose, you might be out. And if you win, you're in. Sitting at -2.5 for SMU, over under 56.5. Bryant, how you feeling about this one?
The only really thing I think Clemson has going for them this game is the coaching staff has played in many of games like this. They know how to approach conference championship games and games with major implications, and they got good players. It's just a matter of whether they can put it together as they have a few times this season. But we've seen Clemson falter many times this season as well, with a few losses to some good teams, nonetheless. But if Cade Klubnik can contain the ball, if they can get Phil Maffa going on the ground, and that defense can hold this high-powered SMU offense to some 3-and-outs or some punt drives, they have definite chance. The person I think SMU has the better offense in this game for sure. Their defense has been okay, especially with how bad some of the defenses have been in the ACC. So SMU, I think, is the better team, and they're playing better overall right now. So we'll see how it comes and how they play under the bright lights. Prime time for a conference championship.
Jennings and Smith are the two best offensive players in this football game, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I've also talked many times about how I think the moments are too big for Cade Klubnik. So I
Yep.
think maybe that shines its head here in this football game. So kind of anxious to see how this plays out. I think whichever team obviously can limit the turnovers. I think whichever team can find success earlier and get the confidence going. I also, what worries me a little bit for SMU is that this game is in Charlotte. So obviously
Yeah.
this is going to be damn near a home game for Clemson. I think they are going to be out-fanned, if you will. So if SMU can find some confidence early on, start to believe in themselves even more, I think SMU could boat race them. I think that potential is there for SMU to blow them out because I don't think Clemson can score with SMU. If SMU gets comfortable and finds a game plan that works, they could kick the shit out of Clemson. I know Clemson had a really good football game with South Carolina, and if he doesn't, Klubnik, once again, big moment, doesn't throw a pick at the end of that football game, they kick it, a field goal, may go into some overtime. But man, I just don't think Clemson has what it takes. And I sit here and listen to Dabo Swinney already talk about how we were the first 15-0 national championship or national champion. We could be the first 3-loss. Dude, pump the brakes. You shouldn't
Yeah.
even be here. When you finished your game against South Carolina last week, you didn't even think you were in this moment until Mario Cristobal handed it to you. So don't give me that shit. I hope and really do think that SMU can get this done. Now, if Clemson can generate pressure like early on in the first quarter and knock SMU on their heels, Rhett Lashley has an uphill battle. He's in a rock fight at that point against Clemson.
Yep. I think you made a good point. Whoever can get going first is going to have more success in this game. I think the key in this game is momentum. Whoever can sustain the momentum on the offensive side of the football will probably win this football game. I think if there's multiple swings and big plays for maybe a pick six by Clemson or something like that, then SMU could be in trouble. But if SMU can stay on schedule and put together some good drives and keep that momentum on their side, I definitely think they could come out conference champion.
Absolutely. All right, Bryant, the moment's here, brother. We no longer have Dave, so we're going to go a new route. Whatever you I both pick, it's going on our Book It segment. So let's dive
Love it.
into it first right here. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Mountain West. We have UNLV, Boise State -4 with the over-under at what I say earlier. It went down to, what is it?
57.5.
It's now 57.5. All right, Bryant. UNLV or Boise
Let me
State
make
to
sure that's
cover?
right.
Which one you got?
To
I
cover,
can I can pull this up as we go here.
I got it.
Yep, -4.5 or -4 over under 57.5. Who you got?
Personally, I think UNLV covers and outright wins this game. So I like them at +4 there. I think they, control Boise State like they, failed to do completely in the first matchup. Like we mentioned, Georgia Tech, it's hard to beat the same team twice. I think UNLV will be prepared in this game and come out and probably win this game outright. But so I'm going to take them at +4 in this game.
All right. What do you got in the over under?
Personally, the 57.5 seems a little high to me. I think the defenses are going to play well in this game. I think they're going to limit Genty, as much as you possibly can. So I'm going to go with under.
All right, Bryant, we got two plays on the Book It segment. We're going to take UNLV +4 and under 57.5 by the hook, make it 58. I couldn't agree more. I cannot believe I'm saying that. I've been the biggest Boise State and Ashton Genty supporter all season long. I think it might come to a head in this football game. We're going to trust the old faithful Barry Odom, Mizzou's old coach here, to come get us a cover and
Hey, how
limit the runs.
how wild it would be to see Barry Odom in the college football playoff when we
Oh,
shit
that
on him
dude.
5 years ago.
I never in a million years thought those two would go in the same sentence. So credit to him. Credit to what he's done. They also lost their quarterback early on, Matt Saluka, to the transfer portal. That blew up in his face. House Malik Williams is better anyway. So this really worked out for UNLV the best it possibly could. UNLV +4, book it. UNLV Boise State under 58, book it. Real quick, Boise State might still win, but I think UNLV covers. Is for sure. I love UNLV +4. I want to preface that. I
Yep.
love it. Book that shit.
So as
Next
far
game.
as the
Go
book
ahead.
it segment type thing, are we thinking like parlay these two together, or are we going to bet them individually?
Hey
Like
man, I
if
love taking risk, but I'm gonna bet these all individually.
Okay, that makes sense. That's
I
what I
may
was leaning
parlay
to,
them
but
and bet them individually. You don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
you get better odds that way.
We'll see how college basketball goes the rest of this week. All
Absolutely.
right. The next conference game championship that we want to talk about and make our picks on. Bryant, ACC championship game. We have SMU -2.5, over under 55.5. What direction are you going?
I think this is a no-brainer for me. Honestly, we talked about it here at the last segment. I think SMU covers, and I think they win this game. And I think the game's going to go over as well. So I think we both can agree on that. I kind of got the hint from you with some conversations we had this week. I think SMU beats them. I think this is a chance to be a blowout. The only reason maybe this, if we think it's going to go the way it goes, it might be a blowout to where Clemson doesn't get enough points to cover the over. But I think they'll score still a little bit. But I think SMU will win, cover the 2.5, and the game will go over that 55.5 points.
Hey, we've got a book it and a book it. SMU -2.5. We're booking that shit. We're going to go ahead and buy the hook and make it SMU -2. And we're going to go ahead and double dip and take SMU Clemson over 55. We're buying that hook to make it 55. Hey, I love it, man. We are 4 for 4 together so far. This is a good recipe or a bad. Let's only time will tell, brother. Next one, Big 12. Iowa State, Arizona State. Currently sitting at Arizona State -2.5 with an over under of 49.5. Bryant, can we keep the train rolling?
I think we're going to keep the train rolling in this game too. I like Iowa State there at -2. +2, and the over to hit the over 49.5. Like we mentioned, both these teams are playing their offensive strengths against their other team's defensive weaknesses. I think that bodes well for the over. Also, I think Iowa State just is going a little bit better football team. They don't have the best player in the field. I think Cam Scabo is the best player on the field, but he might be getting 30 plus carries in this game to try to propel Arizona State to a win with them being banged up at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to go Iowa State to cover that 2 and the game to go over the 49.5.
Hey, Bryant, we're going to book it and book it. We're going to take Iowa State +2.5, make it 3 by the hook, and we're going to take the Iowa State, Arizona State over 49.5 by the hook, make it 49. On to the next one. Can we keep the train rolling here? We have Oregon, Penn State. Oregon sitting at -3.5 with an over under of 49.5. Let's keep her rolling, baby. Come on.
So I'm actually going to go Oregon this game. I know Penn State is a very good football team. I think we're going to see a knockout drag out game, classic Big Ten type game. I think the unders in play on this game here at the under 49.5. But I'm going to go Oregon to cover that -3.5.
All right, man. All good things must come to an end. I am going to take Penn State +3.5. I'm going to buy the hook and make it +4. We're not going to book it because we're indifferent on this. And the reason I'm going to lean Penn State, Brian, is I don't want to go against myself. I have the Penn State Conference Championship for the Big Ten play already there. So it wouldn't surprise me if you are correct on this one. But I tell you what, we are going to book, Brian. We are going to book the under 49.5, and we're going to buy that hook and make it under 50. I do like the under in this football game. So we are going to go ahead and book that shit. Penn State, Oregon, under 50.
We mentioned it. I still think the James Franklin effect is going to come to fruition at some point in this game, and that might come back to bite Penn State at some point.
Oh, I'm scared to death about that. I'm the first here to tell you. I'm scared to death that the James Franklin effect comes into play. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a concern. The last game we can make a pick on for this weekend, Bryant. SEC championship game. Georgia, Texas, currently sitting at Texas now -3 with an over under 49.5. Tell me what you like.
This one's the toughest one. This one's kind of a gut pick. I think this game can go either way. Personally, I do think Georgia can come through and beat Texas. Texas has kind of been hanging around there at the top of the SEC, been playing some close games. They looked better than last week against Texas A&M, but Georgia did struggle with Georgia Tech. So I think this game's going to come down to the last half of the fourth quarter, who has the last possession of the game. But the way Carson Beck's been playing as of late, the pedigree that Georgia has in these type games. This game's in Atlanta. There's going to be a massive amount of Georgia fans there. I'm going to roll with Georgia at that +2.5. I think it's +2.5. Yes, by
Yep.
the hook to 3. And also, I think this game's going to be under as well.
I've been so back and forth on this football game that I still
I
don't know
have
what I
too.
want to do. So I'm going to be honest with you. I want to lean Georgia, but I don't think even if I lean Georgia, I don't know if I want to put that on our book it segment just because I
I agree
don't
with you.
love it. I don't love it.
Personally, I don't want to put anything on this game. I think this is a game I just want to sit back and enjoy and watch.
I will say this, I am comfortably picking the under. So if you comfortably like
I
the
like
under,
that. I like
I'm
that.
good with putting that on our book it segment because I do like the under 50 in this football game. So if you're good with that, I'm good to go ahead and give the green light. Are you good?
Absolutely. Let's do that. I
Book
think we
it.
don't worry about who's going to cover. I think we just worry about the score as far
Yep.
as the book it segment's concerned, and just enjoy the game and watch probably one of the better games, if not the best game of the weekend.
Yep, absolutely. So book it. Georgia, Texas, under 50. Bryant, man, I am so excited for this weekend. Conference championship weekend. We have great matchups. Dude, look at these spreads we got, man. I can't tell
They're
you the last
tight.
time we've had conference championship weekend where the spreads have been this tight. This is spectacular. Going to make great, great football. And, man, a lot of playoff implications on this. But, hey, we had an absolute killer episode here. We covered everything in college football top to bottom. Man, I'm happy we got to do this. If you don't have anything else, if you do, go ahead and take it. If not, I'll take it from there and get us out of here, brother.
I'm good to go. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We kind of talked about the other side of college football here, besides the games that are playing right now with signing day and the transfer portal. That plays a huge, if not the most important role in these type of games coming to fruition the next season. So it's fun to follow recruiting. The transfer portal, it gets a bit hectic. We just want to make sure and bring it up. But other than that, I think we dove in deep in some of these games, especially the important ones that had playoff implications. But there's also a lot of other good games out there as well. Conference
Yes.
USA football. Mac has a good game too, so pay attention to those. They don't have the national implications like the games we talked about do. But
Army Tulane, great game.
yeah, it's been a fun episode. I was very looking forward to this show. I hope everybody enjoys it, and I hope they tune in and share with a bunch of people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was looking so forward to this episode. My favorite one of the year right here. But hey, like Brian said, make sure you're sharing, liking, subscribing, and telling your friends. Man, we have really good content right here. And you know what we like to say. We're raw dogging this episode, man. No edits. We're gonna cut this and we're gonna release it right after we're done first thing in the morning. So make sure you are telling your friends about this. Fantastic stuff here, Bryant. But hey, you can follow us on X at DT_sports_. Facebook Deep Threat Sports Network, Instagram Deep Threat Sports with a Z, TikTok Deep Threat Sports Network, Spotify Deep Threat Sports, YouTube Deep Threat Sports. Real quick, our schedule going forward, we are going to record Sunday night for Selection Sunday. We will have an episode out to you no later than Monday morning, hopefully dropping Sunday night with our live reactions of what happens from the conference championship games and the playoff rankings. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. We will get to you on Sunday. But Bryant, hey man, until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy some college football. We will be in a lot of contact. Till next time, brother. Peace.
Peace.
Love the balloons.
Love the balloons.